And now I would like to present Ilkka Haavisto from Finland. And I think it will work better, your presentation. And we will hear then his perspectives, the scenario, the future scenarios that are perspective in the point of view in Finland.
Hi, my name is Ilkka Haavisto and I'm from the Finnish Business and Policy Forum, where I oversee our research operations. My institution, also known from its Finnish acronym EVA, is the #1 think tank in Finland, and it was founded 50 years ago by the Finnish business community. Winter is closing in here in Finland, so I'm looking very much forward meeting you all in a hopefully slightly warmer Lisbon.
Please come to the stage, Ilkka. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So here I am. Roughly 4 years ago, I was in a meeting room with a bunch of Finnish CEOs, external experts, and we were building our scenarios. And we had like 20, 40 different kinds of critical events which might trigger a certain scenario. One of them on the table was an event that Elon Musk will move to Finland. And that was rejected out of hand because it was not plausible, and actually we couldn't find out that how on earth could that happen. Next on our table was an event that Russia decides to invade one of its neighbors. That was also almost rejected as implausible event, a low probability event. But in the end, it stayed on the table. We made a scenario out of it. And afterwards, when we presented the scenarios, like 6 months later, one of my friends at the Nordic West Office, which is another think tank in Helsinki with whom we do these scenarios, the CEO came to them and said that this is a waste of time. No one believes in these kinds of tricks. And then this happens. And this is exactly why we have to try to work with scenarios in order to not just to stick to forecasting, because future events can be unpredictable, and even small things can grow to big things, and big things can turn irrelevant. Here's a big thing, which is important for scenario thinking. And the main question here is that what this man wants to achieve during his tenure in office, which might actually be pretty long as he lives. Another thing, which one of these guys will be in office in the beginning of 2025, and which one will be out, or maybe neither one of these will be in charge. The third question is that how much power really do guys like this wield in the world? If you don't know who he is, don't worry. 1 year ago, I didn't know either. But he's Jensen Huang, the CEO and president of NVIDIA company, which makes the most critical chips needed for AI systems. So we've done scenarios several times, and now I'm going to present you in a quite fast pace, since I don't have 3 hours on me. I have like 15 minutes. So I try to present you what we are working with right now. And the time period we usually use is 6 to 7 years, because if you take a longer perspective, scenarios might become altogether too speculative. One Japanese colleague once said to me, when I told him about the mighty power of the European Union, said that listen, if you think that world is a baseball league, there are really only 2 Super League players, and these are China and the US. But we, of course, also include European Union in these calculations. Finland is a small country. Our leading companies, their business is totally global, so that's why we often operate with global scenarios. And this time we have, as usual, 4 scenarios, and the idea here is that the world will be, in the future, the fragmentation will continue, or it is not impossible. I grant you that it's not plausible. We might return to the path of increasing cooperation. Then the another question is that will the world be more government-driven, as it has become later, or will we return to a more market-driven world? And we've given these names to these scenarios. If the world will be government-driven and more cooperative, the thing we will see is orderly decoupling. And if the world is cooperative and market-driven, we will live in a tech boom. And if everything goes to south, we will live in a government-driven world, a fragmenting world, and we're going to have lots of crises. We call that the polycrisis world. And if the world is fragmenting and it's still market-driven, we could call it sleepwalking from the point of view of global governance. So how did we get to each scenario? So in orderly decoupling, we're going to see an amicable divorce between China and the USA, and Europe will end up navigating between these 2 great powers. There are lots of different kinds of terms for the decoupling going on, de-risking, but if it will become reality and it will work, it will be a cut of different kinds of critical ties in a relative short time period for certain things, but longer time periods for other things. If we're going to live in a tech boom world, AI, quantum computing, they will like wipe out or put aside different kinds of political struggles because business is so good for everybody. And in polycrisis, we get there through the path which somebody might think that we are already on. We have war in Ukraine. We have a very serious conflict between Israel and Hamas. Who knows what's going to happen in larger Middle East? And as Antonio Martins de Cruz just said, there are many other conflicts going on around the world which might even escalate and combine also together. And if we are sleepwalking, we're going to see a lot of small crises, but nothing that would merit strong action and an end to the crisis. We would see a lot of prolonged struggles and crises, perhaps with sometimes higher intensity, lower intensity, and in this case, growth would be quite low, and that would perhaps mean that central banks would go back to quantitative easing. Okay, let's look at the key drivers. As I said, Elon Musk moving to Finland didn't end up among the key drivers, but they are quite clear here. There's, in decoupling, it's, of course, as Hubertus just said, a great power competition. In tech boom, it's, of course, the new technologies, advances in AI and quantum computing, in polycrisis, different kind of crises, and in sleepwalking, one major component is that we're going to have pretty weak national decision-making. In sleepwalking, it might be also possible that in certain regions, countries would start to not disintegrate, but regionalism would take a stronger hold, because certain parts of country, your neighboring country, there's a part of that country who wanted to become independent. It didn't end well, but you can't say that kind of scenarios couldn't become reality sometime. The key actors in different scenarios. In order decoupling, we got three groups. We got America and their friends, we got China and their friends, and then we have a semi-autonomous Europe, which needs to cooperate with the US, but doesn't want to cooperate in every matters, like we just heard from Antonio. In tech boom, it's guys like Jensen Huang, big international companies, unicorns, and of course consumers and companies which take benefit from their products. And in polycrisis, we have the strong national leaders, the autocrats, and in sleepwalking, we have regions and of course networks of like-minded consumers and citizens. So we had the table the question of Ukraine war in different scenarios. If we live in the world of orderly decoupling, that will mean that some kind of a deal which is not satisfactory to either part will be reached. We have called that Minsk 3.0. In tech boom, we built a path to regime change in Russia and forced retreat from Ukraine. I grant you this is not currently, doesn't seem too probable, but it's still possible. We saw a mutiny in Russia in summer, and of course it was not close, but how the Russians reacted to Prigozhin's mutiny, they were pretty apathic and passive, so something like that could turn up again. In polycrisis, we would perhaps see a severe escalation. If that war escalates and continues, we feel in our team that it's not impossible that we would see NATO forces in Ukraine. In sleepwalking, the thing we would see would be a frozen conflict. Maybe I'll say a few words about this later. Then a few words about technology in different scenarios. You might already guess what it's in here. In orderly decoupling, as we have seen, China and US are making huge investments. And as Hubertus just said, Europe, we got great experts, but lack of investments. In tech boom, we would see a fierce competition between mainly American, but also Chinese AI companies trying to lead the competition. And I think this is the main driver of this whole scenario, that business is booming and everybody's doing good business. In polycrisis, I guess the role of AI would be disruption, because AI can be misused in so many ways, and also lacking regulation might be super harmful. In sleepwalking, I admit, we had severe difficulties in trying to build a credible scenario how this would work in sleepwalking, because technology involves lots of sharing. Here we thought that technologies such as blockchain, which are open source based, might do some kind of breakthrough. And then last of these themes, green transition, how it would go in different scenarios. Well, green industrial policies are in the mode right now, and we're seeing that in Europe. We strive to have strong regulation. We are a regulatory superpower. US offers strong incentives, and China actually offers both. In tech boom, we believe that the markets and technologies solve the problem. In polycrisis, no one solves the problem. And in sleepwalking, we would have regions and places where the green transition is already done, and then we'd see lots of regions where nothing is done. Supply chains. Orderly decoupling, those famous buzzwords, reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring. But in tech boom, we believe that we might see a return of global supply chains, because the option in orderly decoupling, everybody knows that it would cost more and a lot more. In polycrisis, we would be in a situation where the disruptions we've seen so far are nothing compared to the future. In sleepwalking, we would have some areas of the economy where we would have global supply chains, but then we would have extremely local supply chains and lots of local production. Lastly, let's take a super short look at the three key players here, what we come up with. And this is now China. In orderly decoupling, they want to be self-sufficient and they invest big in green transition. In tech boom, if they want to succeed there, they have to ease controls on foreign investors. They are cracking down on them. Of course, as Hubertus said, China is not alone in the region. It has to interplay with its neighbors. In polycrisis happens one of the critical events, which is that China brings Taiwan into its folds and Western companies leave China. Philip Davidson, who is nowadays retired admiral, but who used to be commander of the American Indo-Pacific Fleet, he said in early 2001 that there's a 6-year window during which he believes that China will do something. We are right now in the middle of that window, so it hasn't happened yet, but it's not totally implausible that it could happen. In sleepwalking, that decision would be delayed. China's current leader has indicated that China will do that one day, but we also know that China plans for the long term, so this comes out from that perspective. So the USA. If we are living orderly decoupling and as things go as they seem to go right now, it means that USA will win the green transition. And that's because they offer more carrots than sticks to advance with that transition. In tech boom, the main thing is that Silicon Valley is back in the game, and we will see so many new companies growing so fast that we have never seen anything like that. In polycrisis, in that scenario, US will no longer support Ukraine, and the takeover of Taiwan happens, and USA really cannot do anything substantial to help. In sleepwalking scenario, the Americans have problems with their political institutions, or they continue or get worse, and the internal divisions inside get even deeper than they are today. And with regards to the ESG or oil and gas, we'll see completely different kinds of happenings. There is in the States, there is a semi-serious movement in California which suggests that they should exit from the United States. We haven't included that in our scenarios so far, because we have so far put it in the same category as Elon Musk moves to Finland, but it's still on the table. And finally, Europe. That's what we're going to see. In orderly decoupling, we're going to see ambitious EU institutions trying to do their best and trying to also to extract more money to finance themselves. Europe continues to do business with both Europe and China. In tech boom, to get there, many of the things Hubertus just said in his presentation would have to become reality. And and in polycrisis, I'm afraid we're going to have internal blocks within EU. We've seen already some cracks in support for Ukraine. Those could deepen. And in sleepwalking, we could have relatively unambitious European institutions which would maintain kind of a basic structures of the single market, oversee also the trade relations to other countries, but wouldn't do much more. So here was a short presentation of these four. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ilkka. It was an incredible presentation. You debug a really complex matter and made it so visual, so clear, so straightforward. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are questions in the audience. Yes, there are. So who's having the microphone? Oh, okay. Can you please go and...
Yes, thank you very much. It was a really good presentation. I have just one single question. I didn't understand quite well why you call the fourth scenario as sleepwalking. Why the word sleep there?
Yeah, that name actually comes kind of from the sleep of global governance. There's no one steering the boat. So, but I grant you that you could take another perspective to that. So I'll put this in mind, and next time we are working with the scenarios, I'll say that in Lisbon we got constructive comments. One thing I would like to say, which is, I think it's remarkable that when speaking with Asian experts, they want to speak about China, of course, because it's so huge and important for them. They want to speak about the US. They don't want to hear much about Europe. But one country which they usually mention is Iran. And that's a country which has been off our radar screen I think in our ministries and also in our strategy departments of the companies, because that's a huge country which exerts different kinds of influence all around the world. If you take, for example, the current situation, they are arming Hamas, they are running Hezbollah, they have troops in Syria, they are selling their oil to China, and they are selling arms to Russia. And at the same time, they are trying to build a nuclear bomb. So that's a country which I think everybody in the Western world should take more seriously and more comprehensively than just to think about different kinds of sanctions and different kinds of activities just in single action points. It should be analyzed more thoroughly and thought about that what the rest of the world could do with that country. Okay.
Any more questions? I think there's one more question. So there's one more question. Let's take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, so thank you for the presentation. I have one question. So for me, it was very clear, the diagrams that you showed. My question was, what if some countries adopt like a polycrisis compartment, and others would adopt like a sleepwalking? So how it is going to happen? So if, for example, China is going to lead and Europe will stay sleepwalking?
Okay. This is a really good question, and I'll begin by saying something about these scenarios, because some of these scenarios are much more probable. Actually, we are kind of living in one of them, and some of those scenarios are much more unlikely. And another thing is that some of those scenarios are more desirable, and certain of those scenarios are more undesirable. And that means that we still have to be prepared for each and every one of those scenarios. Now, in sleepwalking, the basic idea is that over time, over the course of those 7 years, there would be so many crises that everybody would be dragged into those crises and be affected with different ways, and even Europe would hurt. If not otherwise, we would have, in that scenario, huge immigrant inflows, unforeseen inflows like the ones we've seen and still see even today at the Mediterranean or in the Canary Islands. We would see much more like those. So we would be dragged into that crisis conundrum anyway. But I have to think about that name, sleepwalking, because there's something about that I'm already now thinking that we ought to change. One more comment about the scenario axis, because I think almost everyone thinks that the relevant side is the upper side, where cooperation works well either in decoupling or then in a market-driven tech boom world. But we spoke recently with Professor Chris Miller, who has written the book Chip War, and he took a look at our scenarios, and he said that upper side is completely irrelevant, that we are going to live on the underside of that map, so that we are going to live in polycrisis or sleepwalking. I thought that was a bit overly pessimistic, but I've been thinking about that ever since. So thank you a lot.